When I got to Congress in 1980, there was a good deal of cooperation. There were differences, but they weren't personalized. And Newt Gingrich came to Congress and specifically said, and he's written this, that he did not believe the Republicans would ever be able to take over as long as it was seen as a debate between people of goodwill, that he had to demonize the opposition, that he had to say the opposition was corrupt and traitorous, and et cetera. And that provoked, one, it was somewhat successful at first, and it provoked a reaction. Now, the particular problem we have, it's gotten worse. I mean, when I was ranking member of the committee, 2003 to 2007, and Mike Oxley ran it in a bipartisan way. I mean, he was in charge, clearly. We weren't making policy, but there was some impact at the margins. Today, that's not the case. The Republican Party today in the House is dominated, well, I guess I would say this. It consists half of people who think like Michelle Bachmann, and half of people who are afraid of losing a primary to people who think like Michelle Bachmann. And that leaves you very little ability to work things out. Personally, yeah, I still get along with a lot of people, and there are a few members I can work with. But and here, look, I have to say, part of this is not just us. Remember, Congress is not some autonomous entity that parachuted through the dome. We're elected by people. There's no member of the House of Representatives who didn't get more votes than anybody else for that job. The public cannot be totally absolved from this responsibility. They picked us. And in particular, what you have is this, and it has to do with primaries. The activists in both primaries, people on the left and people on the right, live in parallel universes. No longer do people get most of their information from a common media source and then diverge in how they interpret it. The left is at MSNBC and on the blogs. The right is on Fox and on talk radio. And what happens is people know different facts. And what happens again is these are echo chambers. People hear agreement with themselves. So you have the most active people on both sides of the spectrum convinced that their view is the majority view. So if those of us who are their allies try to make a compromise, we are told, why are you doing that? You're just a solid. There's no reason to. I had people who did not believe that we didn't have the votes for a single-payer health care, which I was for. I was for Medicare for everybody. Works for me. I think it worked for everybody. People wouldn't believe that. So that's another obstacle to cooperation. There are people who object to cooperation in principle because they do not see the need for it, because they believe that their side is absolutely in the majority. My late colleague Gary Studs was the first openly gay congressman. Gary, I was the first one to volunteer it, and in fact, the 25th anniversary of my volunteering that will be next Memorial Day. But I believe it had an impact. I think it did. I mean, I am very moved when Christine Quinn, who's the Speaker of the New York City Council and a serious candidate to replace Mayor Bloomberg, tells audiences that Christine is in her 40s, that my example was helpful to her. Yeah, look, the best antidote to prejudice is reality, because prejudice is by definition based on ignorance of people's real condition. And I am proud that by my finally coming out, it was 47, it didn't happen in a clean sweep, but when I volunteered finally to come out in 1987, I do think it was helpful in that regard, and yes, I am proud of that. And I'm frankly proud legislatively. I will say one of the things that we were able to do in the lame duck Congress last year was the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and I was able to play a major role on that. Speaker Pelosi, then Speaker Pelosi, really kind of put me in charge of that, and I have the gavel that was used when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed hanging up.